I bought my first house, and my parents said my brother deserved to live there. He moved in while I was at work and took my room. They claimed I owed them, so I lawyered up and locked them out for good. I'm 28, and for the first time in my life, I thought I had finally made it. After years of saving, working overtime, and eating as little as possible, I had just bought my first house. It wasn't a mansion or anything, just a 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. But to me, it felt like a castle. I had worked for every dollar of that down payment, built my credit from scratch, and negotiated the mortgage myself. It was mine. The first weekend after I got the keys, I invited my parents and my younger brother Tyler, 25, over for dinner. I'd been excited all week, imagining their reactions as they saw the place for the first time. I thought this was going to be a proud moment for all of us, a kind of look we did it moment. The night started fine. Mom complimented the kitchen. Dad asked about the mortgage rate. Tyler made a joke about how far I was from downtown, but there was this edge in the air I couldn't quite place. You know that weird tension when everyone's smiling, but it feels a little too forced. That was the vibe. We sat down to eat, and that's when Tyler smirked, leaned back in his chair and said it. You only bought this house because Mom and Dad helped you, so let me move in. You've got the space. I froze for a second, fork halfway to my mouth. Oh, what? Mom nodded like Tyler had just made the most reasonable request in the world. He's right, Alex. You should help family. Tyler's been having a rough time with rent. It's the least you can do. Dad, of course, piled on. Exactly. Your mother and I raised you. We supported you through college. And now that you're settled, it's time to give back. Let your brother stay here rent-free until he gets back on his feet. It's the least you can do. I laughed at first, thinking it was some weird joke. Tyler moving in rent-free in my house that I just bought. I waited for one of them to crack a smile, but no one did. They were all looking at me like I was supposed to just say, "Sure, no problem," and hand over the keys to my spare room. Hold on, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. I didn't ask for your help with this house. I paid for it myself. Why would Tyler just move in? He's got a job. Tyler rolled his eyes. Yeah, but my rent just went up. And you've got 3 bedrooms. You don't even need all that space. Mom sighed dramatically like I was being selfish. Alex, stop making this difficult. Family helps family. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an expectation. I took a slow breath, put my fork down and said carefully, if that's how you all feel, maybe you shouldn't expect me to keep helping you anymore. The table went quiet. Even Tyler stopped smirking. For a moment, the only sound was the clinking of Dad's fork against his plate. I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I didn't look away. Then slowly, I reached into my pocket and pulled something out that made all 3 of them freeze in place. I didn't plan on dropping that line. Don't expect me to keep helping you anymore, but it came out of me like a spark hitting dry wood. The silence that followed was thick, like everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Mom's fork hovered in midair. Tyler's smirk finally cracked into a frown. And Dad just looked at me like I had kicked his favorite dog. What's that supposed to mean? Dad finally said, his tone sharp enough to slice through the quiet. It means, I said, leaning back in my chair, that I've been doing a lot for this family lately. Helping out financially, helping Tyler with his car last month, helping you guys with that vacation fund when the water heater blew. And now suddenly, apparently, I'm supposed to hand over free housing because I'm the responsible one who bought a house. Tyler snorted. Oh, come on. You act like you're some saint just because you chipped in a couple times. You're single, Alex. No kids. You've got way more disposable income than I do. I'm just asking for a room, not a kidney. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Right. Because having a job and paying my own bills is a rare medical condition I should be punished for. Mom shot me a look. Alex, that's not fair. Your brother is trying. He's been under so much stress. Really, I cut in maybe a little sharper than I intended, because last week he posted an Instagram story from Miami with a caption that said, and I quote, "Living my best life." Is that the stress we're talking about? Tyler rolled his eyes. Wow, stalking my socials now creepy much. I follow you. It's not stalking if you literally broadcast it to your 300 followers, I said, shrugging. Also, I'm pretty sure that poolside margarita cost more than my water bill for the entire month. Dad pushed his plate away, clearly getting annoyed. Enough, both of you. This bickering is childish. The point is, your mother and I are asking you to step up for your family. We helped you get where you are. It's time to return the favor. That line hit me right in the chest because it wasn't true. They hadn't helped me get where I was, not financially anyway. If anything, I had been slipping them extra cash for years, but I bit my tongue. This was not the hill to die on tonight. I stood up collecting plates like the good host I was still trying to be. You know what? Let's table this conversation for later. Dinner's getting cold, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, things got worse. First came the texts from Mom, little passive-aggressive reminders about how much family means and how proud your grandparents would be if you helped your brother through this tough time. She even sent me a picture of Tyler as a toddler wearing a dinosaur onesie with the caption, "Remember when you used to protect him?" I almost replied with, "Yeah?" And then he learned how to talk, but I restrained myself. Then came Dad's calls, short-clipped and always ending with some variation of, "It's your duty, Alex. We didn't raise you to be selfish." The real kicker came on Friday. I got home from work, opened my fridge, and found 2 grocery bags with Tyler's name written on them in Sharpie. He'd apparently let himself in while I was at work, which meant one of my parents had given him the spare key I'd left at their house for emergencies. I called Mom immediately. "Hey, quick question," I said, keeping my tone light. "Did someone break into my house and drop off groceries, or did you give Tyler my spare key?" "Oh, that," Mom said, sounding completely unbothered. "Yes, I gave it to him. He needed to drop off a few things since he'll be moving in soon. It just made sense." I nearly dropped my phone. Moving in soon. "We haven't even agreed on anything." "Alex," she said like she was talking to a stubborn child. "Stop being dramatic. You have 2 empty bedrooms. You won't even notice he's there." I let out a sharp laugh. "Oh yeah, is he bringing a cloaking device because I feel like I'd notice a fully grown man living in my house rent-free?" She sighed. "Why are you making this difficult? He's your brother. He needs support. This is what family does." I gripped the phone tighter. You know what else family does? They ask before handing out keys to someone else's house. That night, I changed the locks. Saturday morning, Tyler showed up at my door with a duffel bag in one hand and a look of pure shock on his face when his key didn't work. "What's wrong with you, Alex?" he said as soon as I opened the door. "Surprise," I said deadpan. "Welcome to the new lock experience. It's very exclusive." He shoved past me into the hallway, dropping his bag. "You seriously changed the locks? You're unbelievable." "Thanks," I said. "I try?" He glared at me. "You're being ridiculous. Mom and Dad said I could move in." "Cool story," I said, crossing my arms. "But last I checked, Mom and Dad don't own this house. I do. And I didn't agree to this." He muttered something under his breath about me being selfish and stormed out, slamming the door so hard one of my picture frames rattled. 2 hours later, Mom called. "What did you do? Tyler said you locked him out." "Yup," I said cheerfully. "Because he doesn't live here." "Alex, you're driving a wedge in this family. Is this really what you want?" "No," I said, my voice finally hardening. "What I want is some basic respect for my boundaries. If that's too much to ask, maybe the wedge was already there." By Sunday night, the group chat was a war zone. Mom sending guilt trip quotes about siblings being lifelong best friends. Dad posting lectures about gratitude, and Tyler dropping passive-aggressive memes about greedy landlords. I stayed quiet, but inside, a little voice was whispering that maybe it was time to stop playing nice, because if they thought I was selfish before they were about to see just how selfish I could get. The group chat stayed quiet for a few days after I ignored their guilt trip. I honestly thought maybe things were cooling down, that they had realized I wasn't budging. I threw myself into work, invited a couple of friends over to Chris Tristan the grill on my back deck, and for the first time since buying the house, I started to feel like it was really my place. Then Friday rolled around. I was coming home from a long day, ready to binge some Netflix and enjoy a rare quiet evening. But when I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. Tyler's beat-up Honda Civic was parked in front of my garage. At first I thought maybe he'd just come by to talk, but when I stepped inside, my worst fear was confirmed. There were boxes in my living room. Not just one or two, an entire stack of them labeled in Tyler's messy handwriting. Clothes, gaming console, kitchen stuff. And there, sitting on my couch with a controller in his hand, was Tyler playing my PlayStation. "Hey man," he said like this was totally normal. "Hope you don't mind. Mom said it was fine for me to go ahead and start moving my stuff, and since you've been so busy." I blinked. "Excuse me." He barely looked up from the screen. "She said you'd come around eventually, so I figured, why wait? Might as well get settled now." I laughed, but it wasn't a funny laugh. It was that hollow, "I can't believe this is happening" kind of laugh. "Tyler, how exactly did you get in here because I changed the locks?" "Oh yeah," he said, finally pausing the game. "Dad had a locksmith friend come by earlier this week and make a copy for me. You really shouldn't make things so difficult, you know." I just stood there, my blood pressure spiking so fast I could hear it in my ears. You had someone rekey my house without my permission? He shrugged, completely unfazed. Relax, man. We just needed a spare key anyway, right? This is your family we're talking about. Stop acting like such a control freak. A control freak for being upset that my house had been essentially invaded. I stormed into the kitchen, half expecting to see my food untouched, and of course half of my leftovers from the night before were gone. There were also 2 six-packs of beer in my fridge that I hadn't bought. Tyler? I said, slowly gripping the counter so I wouldn't lose it. You don't live here. This isn't your place. You can't just move in because Mom said so. You need to get your stuff and leave. He smirked, leaning back against the couch. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad are coming over tonight anyway. We'll all talk it out like adults. And just like that, he unpaused the game. I spent the next hour pacing my own kitchen like a stranger. By the time Mom and Dad arrived, I was ready for war, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Mom walked in like she owned the place. Alex, she said, in that calm, condescending tone only moms seem to master. We need to put an end to this tension. Tyler is under a lot of stress, and you have more space than you need. This arrangement makes sense. An arrangement, I repeated flatly. You mean the one where my brother moves into my house against my will? Dad stepped forward. His face said in a way I'd only seen a handful of times growing up. This isn't just about you anymore, Alex. We've already told Tyler he can stay here as long as he needs. My mouth fell open. You what? You heard me, Dad said firmly. Your family. It's time you started acting like it. I laughed, a short, bitter laugh. Acting like it. You just had someone break into my house and make a copy of my key. That's not family. That's trespassing. Mom shook her head, her voice full of that disappointed tone that used to make me feel guilty as a kid. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Tyler is your brother. He's going through a rough patch and all you can think about is yourself. Rough patch, I said, incredulous. He just went to Miami. He has a job. The only rough patch he's in is the one where he doesn't want to pay rent anymore. That's when Tyler decided to throw gasoline on the fire. Maybe if you weren't such a control freak, you'd actually have a girlfriend by now instead of sitting in this empty house alone. No wonder you bought such a big place. Overcompensating much. For a moment, the room went dead silent. I stared at him and I could feel that laugh bubbling up again. Except this time, there was no humor in it. You know what, Tyler, I said. Finally, my voice low. You can make all the jokes you want about my life, but at least I'm not the one who needs Mommy and Daddy to beg my older brother for free rent. Tyler's smirk faltered for just a second, but Mom was quick to swoop in. Enough, she said sharply. We are not going to let you throw your brother out on the street. If you won't do this willingly, we'll figure something else out. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, my chest tight. Dad crossed his arms. It means we might have to take a more formal approach. Your name might be on the deed, but we can still talk to a lawyer about what's fair. After all, family contributions count for something. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Were they seriously threatening legal action over my house, over something they hadn't even paid for? At that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just picked up my phone, opened my banking app, and scrolled to the history of every transfer I'd made to them over the past 3 years. Mortgage help when their roof needed fixing, extra cash when Tyler lost his job last summer, plane tickets for them to visit Mom's sister last Christmas. I turned the screen around and held it up. See all this? This is what I've done for this family. Tens of thousands of dollars. Every single time you asked, I came through. And now you're threatening me because I won't let Tyler squat here. No one spoke. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. Dad's face went red. Tyler suddenly found the floor very interesting. For the first time that night, I felt completely calm. You all made a choice tonight, I said, my voice steady. And I heard you loud and clear. I walked over to the drawer where I kept the spare key they'd had, took it out, and without breaking eye contact, dropped it into the trash. You've got until tomorrow to get these boxes out of my house, I said to Tyler. After that, anything left here goes to Goodwill. And before any of them could respond, I walked out the front door into the night air, leaving them stunned in my living room. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of muffled voices from the other room. They hadn't left yet. Tyler's game controller clicked a couple more times before he finally shut it off, and I could hear my parents whispering, probably plotting their next family meeting. My chest felt tight. This house had been my sanctuary, the thing I had worked toward for years, and now it felt invaded. Around 2 a.m., I finally heard the front door close. When I got up the next morning, the boxes were still there. Tyler hadn't moved a thing. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table staring at them. The nerve, the sheer entitlement. A part of me wanted to toss them all out onto the lawn and send Tyler a picture of the pile with a cheery "come pick up your stuff" message. But another part of me, the tired, emotionally wrung out part, just sat there numb. That day I barely spoke to anyone. My phone buzzed every hour with messages from Mom. "We didn't mean to upset you last night. We just want what's best for everyone. Tyler can't afford rent right now. Be reasonable. We'll pay you back somehow. Family comes first." The last one really got to me. Pay me back. As if this was some kind of business transaction. I stared at the text, feeling a lump in my throat. Was I really that alone in this family? Just a walking wallet? They could guilt trip whenever it was convenient. By Sunday evening, I finally cracked and called my best friend Noah. He's one of those friends who can make you laugh even when you're furious, and I needed that right now. "Dude," I said as soon as he answered, "you are not going to believe the week I just had. I unloaded everything. The dinner, the key, the boxes, the threats about lawyers." Noah listened quietly for a while, then let out a low whistle. "Man, that's next level. They actually rekeyed your house without asking. That's not just pushy, that's illegal." "Yeah," I said, running a hand over my face. "But if I push back too hard, I'm the bad guy. The ungrateful son. The selfish brother." "Alex," he said, and his voice turned serious. "You are not the bad guy here. They're taking advantage of you. Period." I sank deeper into my chair. I just don't know what to do. If I fight this, it's going to turn into World War II. If I don't, I might as well hand them the deed and move into the basement as their tenant. There was a pause. Then Noah said, "Maybe it's time to stop playing defense." That stuck with me long after we hung up. The next morning, I drove to work in a haze, barely noticing the music on the radio. My productivity tanked. I caught myself staring at spreadsheets for minutes at a time without actually processing anything. I hated feeling this distracted. I prided myself on being the calm, put-together one in my family. But every time my phone buzzed, a knot twisted in my stomach. By Wednesday, the situation had escalated again. I came home to find Tyler's car in the driveway again. And this time there was music blasting from my living room. Not just any music, but his favorite obnoxious rap playlist, the one that rattled the walls. I stepped inside to find him sprawled on my couch with his feet on my coffee table. He didn't even pause the music. "Hey," he said casually. "Mom dropped off some groceries for me earlier. Hope that's cool." I stared at him. "Why are you here?" He shrugged. "Because this is my house too now, apparently." I didn't even answer. I just turned around and went into my bedroom, closing the door behind me. For the first time since buying the house, I locked it. I sat on my bed staring at the floor. This was my lowest point. My house didn't feel like mine. My parents had chosen Tyler over me no matter how much I had done for them. I couldn't even walk into my own living room without bracing for a confrontation. That night, I made a decision. I grabbed a notepad and started writing. Every dollar I'd given my parents over the past 3 years, every favor I'd done for Tyler, every promise they'd made that they were now breaking. By the time I was done, the list was 2 pages long. Looking at it in black and white made something inside me shift. This wasn't just about Tyler freeloading anymore. This was about respect, about boundaries, about the fact that they were willing to steamroll me, my finances, and my life just to keep Tyler comfortable. And maybe, just maybe, it was time I stopped letting them. I started researching quietly late at night in bed with my laptop balanced on my knees. I looked up tenancy laws in my state. I read forums about how to deal with unwanted guests. I even looked into home security systems because apparently I couldn't trust my own family not to show up uninvited. The more I read, the calmer I felt. Knowledge was power, and if they were going to treat this like a battle, I was going to come prepared. I didn't confront anyone right away. Instead, I started putting small plans in motion. I called a locksmith, a different one, and had the locks changed again, this time with high security keys that couldn't be copied without my permission. I set up cameras by the front door and in the garage. Most importantly, I started keeping receipts for everything, every grocery run, every utility bill, every extra expense. If they wanted to argue about fairness, I was going to have documentation. And through all of this, I kept my cool. I was polite when Mom texted. I was civil when Dad called. I didn't rise to Tyler's bait when he sent me memes about being the Grinch who stole free rent. But inside, I was done being the nice guy. Because if they thought this was over, if they thought I was just going to roll over and let them take over my life, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. After that night with my notepad, something shifted in me. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm, almost like I had been through the worst of the storm and was now standing in the eye of it. The house was still quiet. Tyler hadn't dared show up again since I rekeyed the locks for the second time, and I made myself breakfast, savoring the silence. It was the first time in weeks that I actually felt in control. At work, I buried myself in projects not just as a distraction, but because I suddenly had this renewed drive to build something for myself. The more I thought about the situation at home, the more I realized that my best move wasn't just to defend what I had. It was to grow stronger, to make myself so untouchable that no one could hold anything over me again. And almost as if the universe was rewarding me for finally standing up for myself, opportunities started showing up. That very week, my boss called me into his office. "Alex," he said, "we've been impressed with the work you've been doing lately. There's a management position opening up, and I think you'd be perfect for it. It comes with a raise, a significant one." I walked out of that office grinning like an idiot. Not just because of the money, though. Let's be honest, the raise was nice, but because it felt like confirmation that I was on the right path. I wasn't going to let my family guilt me into giving up what I had worked for. I was going to build even more. With the raise, I was finally able to start setting aside serious savings for the first time since buying the house. I opened a separate account just for future investments. And yes, a little part of me labeled it in my head as revenge fund, even though it was mostly just for financial security. Meanwhile, the house started feeling like a sanctuary again. I redecorated the spare bedroom Tyler had been eyeing, turning it into a home office. I bought myself a nice desk, hung some art on the walls, and every time I sat down to work in there, I felt a little jolt of satisfaction knowing it wasn't a space for him anymore. The cameras I installed gave me peace of mind too. No more wondering if someone had been in my house while I was gone. Now I could check my phone and see for myself. It wasn't just material stuff, though. I started hitting the gym again, something I hadn't done consistently since college. At first it was just to burn off the stress, but soon enough I started feeling better, stronger, sharper, more focused. Even my friends noticed the change. "Man, you're glowing," Noah said one night when we grabbed a beer. "I was worried you were going to spiral for a while there, but you look like you've got everything handled." I smirked. "Oh, I've got plans." And I did. I started documenting everything. Every interaction with my parents and Tyler went into a little folder on my computer. Dates, times, screenshots of texts, summaries of calls. It wasn't about being paranoid, it was about being prepared. And slowly the tone from my family began to shift. At first, they had been angry, accusing me of turning my back on them, but now the messages were more cautious, almost pleading. "Mom, Tyler's looking at some apartments this week. Maybe you can help him with the deposit. Dad, we all just want things to go back to normal." I didn't respond right away. When I did, my replies were calm and measured. "I'm glad Tyler's looking for a place," I texted back. "That's the right move for everyone." When Mom asked about the deposit again, I simply replied, "No, I've already helped enough." It felt good. No, it felt amazing to set boundaries without guilt. And maybe it was a little petty, but I started posting pictures of my progress online, the newly redecorated office, the flowers I planted in the backyard, even the new locks on the doors with a caption that said, "Finally got the security upgrade I wanted. Love feeling safe in my own home." Tyler didn't comment directly, but I saw he viewed every story. By the time summer rolled around, I was in a completely different place emotionally. I had paid off a chunk of my mortgage with my raise. I was in the best shape of my life. And I had a plan, a real solid plan for how I was going to make sure this never happened again. The plan wasn't just about Tyler. It was about changing the dynamic entirely, making it clear that I wasn't just the family ATM, the one they could guilt trip into doing whatever they wanted. And then, just when things were finally starting to settle, the final straw arrived. One Friday afternoon, I came home to find a note taped to my door. It was from Tyler. "Since you won't help me, I'm staying at Mom and Dad's for now. But they agree I deserve some of the space here since you wouldn't have made it without them. We'll be talking to someone about that soon." I read the note twice, then 3 times, then felt a slow smile creep across my face. Not because I was happy, far from it, but because this was exactly the opening I needed. If they wanted to escalate this into something formal, I was more than ready. And this time, I wasn't just going to defend myself. This time, I was going to make sure there was no coming back from what I was about to do. When I found that note from Tyler on my door, I didn't crumple it up or throw it away. I pinned it to my fridge, a reminder not just of his entitlement, but of how far they were willing to go to pressure me. If they really were planning to talk to someone about what was fair, I needed to be ready. And I wasn't just ready to defend myself anymore. I wanted to make a statement one they wouldn't forget. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house. Not to argue. I didn't even plan to see them. I just needed to pick up some old paperwork they kept in their filing cabinet. Stuff from when I was in college. But when I got there, I noticed something strange. Mom and Dad's cars were both gone and Tyler's car was in the driveway. I debated leaving, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the side door. Yes, I still had a key to their house, though. After everything that had happened, I was starting to think about returning it and stepped inside. Tyler was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, earbuds in. He didn't notice me at first. I should have just grabbed my papers and left, but when I glanced at his screen as I passed, I froze. He was filling out a form, an application for emergency rental assistance. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in general, but here's the thing. I knew exactly how much Tyler made. He wasn't eligible. And worse, I recognized the address he had listed. It wasn't Mom and Dad's house. It was mine. I stood there staring at the screen until he finally looked up. "Hey," he said casually, pulling out one earbud. "Didn't know you were coming by." I kept my voice neutral. "What are you doing?" He hesitated for a second. "Just filling out some forms for emergency rental assistance?" I said, nodding toward the laptop. He shrugged. "Yeah, they said I might qualify if I show I've got nowhere else to go." "But you do have somewhere else to go," I said, trying to keep my temper in check. "You're literally staying here. And you put my address on there." He grinned, actually grinned like this was all a big joke. "Relax. It's just paperwork. If I get approved, it's free money. Might even help cover your mortgage, you know." Win-win. I stared at him, stunned. "That's fraud, Tyler." He rolled his eyes. "No one's going to check that closely. You worry too much." I walked out before I said something I'd regret, but my mind was spinning. When I got home, I sat down at my computer and started digging. Not just into rental assistance programs, but into every legal document related to my house deed mortgage agreement, property tax records, everything. What I found made my stomach twist and then slowly relax because there it was in black and white. I was the sole owner. No one else's name appeared anywhere. Not my parents, not Tyler, not a single hint of family contributions that could be used to claim equity. It was all mine. But that wasn't the only thing I discovered. While combing through my documents, I came across a clause in my homeowner's insurance policy, one I hadn't paid much attention to before. It specifically covered legal costs related to property disputes, including unauthorized occupancy. That was the moment the pieces started to click into place. I didn't just have the moral high ground, I had the legal high ground too. And if they really wanted to push this, I could take it all the way and have backup from my insurance to cover the fight. Still, I wasn't going to act rashly. I wanted to be smart about this. I wanted every step documented so thoroughly that when the hammer finally dropped, there would be no room for argument. So I started keeping even more detailed records. Every time Tyler showed up, I wrote it down. Every message from my parents went into a folder. I even saved that note on my door and scanned it just in case it went missing later. I also quietly upgraded my security system. The cameras now recorded in high resolution and saved everything to a cloud account. If Tyler ever tried to enter without permission again, I'd have video proof. Meanwhile, at work, I leaned into my promotion. I started networking with some of the company's legal and compliance folks, just casual conversations, nothing too obvious, and picked up a few tips about how to handle property disputes. The more I learned, the more confident I became. By late summer, I had turned the spare bedroom into not just a home office, but a kind of command center. Files neatly organized, cameras monitored from my desk, all communications documented and sorted, and then came the phone call that set everything in motion. It was a Tuesday evening when Mom called, her voice unusually soft. "Alex," she said, "we've been talking and we still think you're being too hard on Tyler. He's going through a lot right now. You should let him stay until he gets back on his feet." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I said very calmly, "If Tyler ever steps foot in my house again without my permission, I will treat it as trespassing. I need you to understand that." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Mom said, "I can't believe you would do this to your own brother. I can't believe you'd keep choosing him over respecting my boundaries," I replied, and hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. In fact, I felt something else entirely. Control. That night, I sat at my desk and finalized my plan. This wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be messy. It was going to be precise, legal, and impossible to undo. And when it was done, they'd never try to pull something like this again. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. No anger, no anxiety, just purpose. If they wanted this to be a battle, I was ready. The first step was locking down the house legally. I called a local attorney I'd been referred to by one of the compliance guys at work. We met for coffee that afternoon, and I laid out everything. The key situation, the threats about taking what's fair, the note Tyler left, even the rental assistance form he'd been filling out. When I finished, the attorney leaned back and let out a low whistle. "You've documented everything. Every text, every call, every visit," I said, sliding the neatly organized folder across the table. She flipped through it, nodding. "You've done half my job for me. If they try anything at all, you'll win. But honestly, you might not even have to go that far. A formal cease and desist letter would probably be enough to make them back off." I grinned. "Perfect. Let's do it." By the end of the week, a beautifully worded letter was ready to go, professional, calm, and very clear. It outlined that I was the sole owner of the property, that any unauthorized entry would be treated as trespassing, and that any attempts to claim tenancy or force shared occupancy would be met with legal action. But I wasn't done yet. The next step was Tyler's little attempt at free money. I contacted the rental assistance program he had applied to, explained that my house was being falsely listed as his residence, and provided documentation that he was not a tenant and had never paid rent. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. Fraudulent applications were taken seriously, and she assured me that his claim would be flagged and investigated. Then, just to be thorough, I notified my homeowner's insurance of the situation. Not because I expected them to pay anything yet, but because I wanted a paper trail showing that I was taking proactive steps to protect my property. By Friday, the cease and desist letter had been sent by certified mail to my parents' address. I didn't hear anything for 2 days. Then Sunday night, my phone rang. It was Dad. "What is this?" he barked as soon as I picked up. "A legal letter against your own family." I kept my voice level. "Yes. Against anyone who tries to enter my house without permission. That includes Tyler." "You've gone too far this time, Alex. This is outrageous." "What's outrageous," I said evenly, "is that you had my house rekeyed behind my back, tried to move Tyler in without my consent, and threatened to get lawyers involved. I've done nothing but protect what's mine." There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Dad said, "Your mother is very upset." "I'm sure she is," I said calmly. "But this stops now. I'm done being the family's safety net. Tyler is not my responsibility. If he needs help, he can find his own way, just like I did." I hung up before he could reply. The next day, I came home from work and saw something that nearly made me laugh out loud. Tyler's boxes were gone. Completely gone. But my plan wasn't just about removing Tyler from the house. It was about making sure the message was crystal clear. So I took it one step further. I drafted a polite but firm message in the family group chat. "I want to be very clear moving forward. My house is off limits unless I invite you. There will be no spare keys, no dropping off groceries, no letting yourselves in while I'm at work. I have cameras now. If anyone enters without permission, I will treat it as trespassing and involve the police. This is not up for debate." I hit send and put my phone down. For a few minutes, there was silence. Then the messages started rolling in. "Mom, I can't believe you talked to us this way. Tyler, you're seriously overreacting, man. Dad, we raised you better than this." I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a picture to my Instagram story, a glass of wine on my back deck, my feet up on the railing, and the caption, "Finally enjoying my home in peace." Within minutes, I saw their little profile icons pop up as they viewed it. And just like that, the group chat went quiet. But I still had one more card to play. A week later, I got a call from the rental assistance office. They confirmed that Tyler's application had been officially denied and flagged for attempted fraud. That meant he wouldn't just be rejected, but his name would now be on a list of people whose future applications would face extra scrutiny. I didn't tell him right away. I waited until Saturday morning when I knew he'd be home and sent him a short text. "By the way, I told the rental assistance program you were falsely listing my house as your residence. You might want to stick to honest applications from now on." The typing bubbles popped up, disappeared, popped up again. Finally, all he sent back was, "You're unbelievable." I smiled and locked my phone. No yelling, no drama, just quiet, calculated moves that left me exactly where I wanted to be, in control with my house and my boundaries completely protected. And yet a part of me knew there was still one final conversation that needed to happen face to face before I could really call this done. Because as satisfying as this was, I wanted them to look me in the eye and understand that this wasn't about money or space or even Tyler. This was about respect. It took another week before I heard from them again. The group chat stayed silent, my phone blissfully free of guilt trip notifications, and for the first time in months, I was able to wake up without feeling that knot in my stomach. But I knew it wasn't truly over, so I decided to finish it. I texted Mom and Dad and invited them over for Sunday dinner. No Tyler this time. I made that clear. Mom tried to argue. He's part of this family too. But I shut it down with a simple reply. This conversation is between us. If he comes, the door will stay locked. When Sunday rolled around, I made the house spotless. I set the table the way I had the night of that first dinner, candles, and everything like I was rewinding to the night it all began. Only this time, I was in control. When they arrived, they looked uneasy. Mom's eyes darted around the house like she was checking to see if anything had changed. Dad kept his jaw tight. We sat down, and for a while no one spoke. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Alex," she said softly, "we just don't understand why you're being so cold. We're your family." I nodded. "You are, and I love you both. But we need to be honest about what's happened." I stood up and placed a folder on the table, the same one I'd shown my attorney. "This is every dollar I've given you over the past 3 years. Every transfer, every receipt. I don't say this to make you feel bad. I say this because you've acted like I owe you something. I don't. I've been helping you because I wanted to, not because I had to." Dad opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "Please just let me finish." I sat back down and looked at both of them. "When you tried to force Tyler into this house, when you rekeyed my locks without asking, when you threatened to talk to a lawyer that crossed the line. This house is mine. I worked for it. And I will never let anyone, not even family, disrespect that again." Mom's face crumpled a little. But I kept going. "You've called me selfish, ungrateful, a control freak. But here's what I've realized. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's healthy. And if respecting those boundaries feels like a punishment to you, maybe that says more about how you've been treating me than it does about me." Dad leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "So what now?" he asked finally. "Now," I said, feeling the calm settle over me again. "Now things change. Tyler is not welcome here unless I invite him. There will be no more spare keys, no more unannounced visits, no more dropping off groceries or using this house like it's a family storage unit. If that's too much for you to accept, then maybe we need some space for a while." Mom wiped at her eyes, silent. Dad nodded slowly. "I don't agree with how you've handled this," he said. "But I can see you're serious." "I am," I said simply. We finished dinner mostly in silence, but it wasn't the tense, angry silence from before. This was quieter, heavier, the kind of silence that means something has shifted permanently. When they left, Mom gave me a hesitant hug at the door. "I still think you're being too harsh," she said. "But I guess we needed to hear this." "Yeah," I said, opening the door for them. "I think we all did." After they drove away, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the tail lights disappear. The house was quiet again. Not empty, not invaded, just quiet. I walked back to the kitchen, blew out the candles, and looked around at the space I had fought so hard to protect. For the first time since buying it, I didn't just feel like I owned a house. I felt like I owned my life. I took the folder from the table, opened the trash can, and dropped it in. Not because I needed to, but because I no longer had anything to prove. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped out onto the deck, and watched the sunset over my backyard. And as the last of the light faded, I said it out loud, not to anyone else, just to myself. "It's mine. Finally, it's mine." And this time there was no one left to argue.